The following is meant for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not meant to establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please consult your mental health provider for your mental health needs. Hello, welcome to Chez Eric, my home, where we talk about psychiatry and religion with a focus on how to apply it to your life. And today we will be continuing the William James series on the Varieties of Religious Experience, lectures 4 and 5, where he talks about healthy mindedness, a very, very interesting concept indeed. And this is part 3. I think we're part 3 right now. And parts 1, we talked about happiness and religion, and we introduced the concept of healthy mindedness. Part 2, we talked about an example of, a once-born, which is generally healthy mindedness, individual, Walt Whitman, to see that, yeah, these people exist and how they exist. And then now we will be continuing this conversation about optimism and goodness and how someone who is healthy-minded is able to just ignore the negative things in life. So let's get to that. William James talks about optimism, and he says that there are two types of optimism, optimistic things. There's the involuntary and voluntary. Voluntary, also known as you would say, systematic. And the involuntary form is really just feeling happy as a response, as an immediate response to something. And that's just something that happens when you're feeling happy and optimistic. He's not too interested in that one. Okay, he is actually more interested in the voluntary / systematic understanding of happiness and goodness and all the optimistic things. The systematic version is trying to get a conception, an abstract idea of what is goodness, what is happiness, what are good things. And it takes the characteristics of good things, and it says that the essence of what is good is these sort of characteristics, and then disregards everything else. So, for example, let's say, what is generosity, right? You could say that generosity is based on the intentions of the individual, and then you take away everything else, like how much, whether or not they consider the consequences of their generosity, or whether or not they gave a lot of money versus little money. It doesn't matter. What you care about is the intention. So a good example would be, let's say someone is giving a lot of money, $1 billion, and you say intentions are what matter. So if they give the $1 billion just to get a tax write-off to people, that's not good. That's not actually generous. This is irrespective of what that billions of dollars is doing for everybody else, what good that's creating. You would just try to find characteristics at the exclusion of all other things. And the reason is because it's too complex to think about the complexities of what it means to be happy or what it means to be good. You really want to make it really, really simple. William James points out that happiness has a bit of a blindness and insensibility to it, right? And this is due to needing to self-protect itself. The thought of evil and suffering doesn't really enter into the mind of someone who is happy. It just kind of leaves. So, for example, the example he gives is that on your wedding night, are you thinking to yourself, oh my God, I could be homeless? Not really, right? Or if you lost your job, are you thinking to yourself how wonderful your family is, right? How wonderful a family you have? No, not really. For some strange reason, when you're in a happy state, you're not thinking about sad things at all. And when you're in a sad state, you're not really thinking about happy states at all. They're just not really, there's this way of denying each other. And so this hushing of evil, that's what he calls it, this way of saying, I'm not going to talk about evil things, I'm not even going to think about evil, can become a bit of a dogmatic policy, a religious policy, right? That evil simply cannot be there and just ignore it, ignore the devil, ignore Satan, right? And to a third party, it might be that they're just closing their eyes and closing their ears and being very ignorant, and that's kind of an issue. So the thing is that a lot of this is the really cool part that William James kind of points out. A lot of what we call evil, a lot of what we consider to be a bad thing, an unhappy thing, is actually more about the perception of that thing than the actual evil of it. So it's actually more about the inner beliefs and attitudes than it is about the actual, let's say, evil of the thing that we're talking about. So something that is previously considered to be immoral can all of a sudden become moral if you shift your mindset on that. And something that is painful can all of a sudden have meaning in that suffering. So it shifts the mindset on that. And quite simply, he's saying that the healthy-minded attitude will always have a way to take evil things and bad things that happen to them and shift it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, oh, that's relativism, that's garbage, I'm not saying that William James is proposing that this is how one should live their lives. What I'm saying is that William James is recognizing that when we're talking about the simplest form of religious happiness, which he's calling healthy-mindedness, it is this way of being happy in such a simple way that they're able to take evil things and bad things and flip it in their mind, because the perception of evil is actually a perception that can be warped and shaped. And that's pretty interesting on a psychological level, because we are limited beings. I've talked about this before. We are limited beings, and we only perceive the world and we interpret the world in a particular way. In interpreting the world, we interpret the world as parts of it as either good or bad. And when bad things happen to us, we can interpret it as bad. But we also have the potential to change our interpretation so that the suffering that we experience takes a different shape. Whether it's still suffering or not suffering, that's a different thing entirely, but it takes a different shape. So for example, I should have prepared examples beforehand. Let's say we have a situation where somebody lost their job. Some people can simply say, I lost my job, I'm really bad. A bad thing happened to me that is very bad. Someone else could say, oh, I lost my job, I got fired, but this gives me an opportunity to pursue my true passion doing something else. The same action of losing your job existed, but the perception shifted from one person to another, such that the happiness is there for one and not there for another person. And that's a really big deal, because if that's the way that healthy-mindedness, or that's the way religiosity shapes our view and then helps us live a more fulfilling life, then it's a pretty interesting dynamic. Now, I'm not going to make any claims about whether it's a good or bad dynamic, but I am going to say that William James is pointing this out, and it's really interesting that it's pointing it out. So what do you think? What are your thoughts about understanding something that happened to you and then reframing it, right, for the purposes of simply changing the suffering so that you're not suffering as much, and then you can then adopt this healthy-minded sort of quality? What are your thoughts about that dynamic? All right, I hope you enjoyed that. Do like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Hello, I just wanted to take time to say thank you very much for your support. Every little bit counts. And it's a lot to ask to be a part of your life, even if it's just 10 minutes in a day. We're all really busy, and the fact that you're willing to watch the whole video to the end and subscribe and even comment is very encouraging to make this channel grow and grow and grow. I couldn't have done it without you, so thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, or my brain, or my soul, or whatever. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.